This is the number one marker of lifespan and ultimate longevity. And so they did this study on people that lived the longest, and what they found was not what diet they followed, was not muscle mass, was not anything, their brain size or their IQ or anything. One of the biggest predictors to how long someone will live and how healthy a life they will have was the size and the health of their lungs, of their lung capacity. Even with people that had lung transplants, they found the people that got bigger lungs, a bigger, physically bigger set of lungs, live longer than people that got smaller sets of lungs. And so there's two ways to get those sets of lungs. One, obviously get a transplant, but that's not ideal. But the other two are exercise and breath work, but breathing properly. Welcome back to another episode of the Be Better podcast. My name is Harrison Orr. I'm a men's health and performance coach. I have helped almost 500 guys have less stress, more energy, so that they can have better physical and mental health and just be better in their health, in their relationships, and some of them even use that to make more money. Today's podcast, I wanted to talk about all things breath. On Saturday, I'm running a breath workshop with my local yard gym that I coach at for a lot of the guys there, and I know it's going to be a first for a lot of them. I know they're in for a bit of a shock, bit of a treat, depending on how you look at it. But I wanted to run through some of the things that I'm going to present to them here, partly selfishly for a practice run for myself, but also to share some of this with people that aren't able to make it there, because I know how important breathing correctly is, and also what difference it can make. And it's an absolutely, obviously, free tool that literally everybody can do. If you're alive, if you're listening to this right now, then it is one of the capabilities that you as a human being have. And I know a lot of other people always like to find excuses to why they can't do certain things. I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the energy, I don't have whatever else it is. You're already breathing every single moment of every single day. When you do it correctly, it can make a huge difference to your life, to your energy levels, to your mental health, to your performance, to your sex life and performance, to literally everything that you do. And so if we boil that down to, if you want to feel and perform better, then, and live longer too, then this is probably going to be helpful for you. So how I want to explain this is breaking it down first in terms of like the anatomy, how we should be doing it, and then a bit of a practical implementation of what you can then take away and start implementing kind of right now. And so I think it's worth noting that most people, when they think about taking a deep breath, we even do that wrong. Because how many times have you been stressed out or anxious or angry, whatever, and someone said, calm down, just take a deep breath. And if you take a deep breath right now, like, do that for me. What happened? How did you do that? Did you take a deep breath and try and breathe up? Like, even if you tried to just then breathe through your nose or even through your mouth and went, and then your whole chest and your head went up, probably not as effective as it could be. Because think about it, like, from your nose, if you go up, there's not much there. Like, at best, you've got a couple of inches. Maybe you've got a 4, or maybe if you're like me and balding, you've got a 5 head. So you've got a couple more inches than the rest of us. But there should be a brain in there somewhere. And there's not a lot of room for that air to go if you're trying to go up, right? So breathing up is not as practical as it might seem, especially if you're trying to take a deep breath. If you were to run your tongue over the roof of your mouth, over that palate, that's where your nasal passages follow back. So our nose goes back, not up. So it follows the roof of our mouth and then it goes down our throat. Eventually those two kind of join up at one point. That's how, some people can, when you do that, you can spit that out, that gross stuff. Or you've seen those videos where people drink some milk, laugh so hard it comes out their nose, all that stuff, right? And so they join eventually. That's also why you can technically breathe through your mouth, because it joins up to that airway at some point. So whilst we can breathe through our mouth, just because it would be silly to only have one way to breathe, that would be not ideal from Mother Nature's standpoint, because it's pretty easy to block someone's nose and then they're dead. Shouldn't be our default. It's not our optimal method of breathing. And so if we can just shift that through a few methods I'll take you through right now, then we can absorb more oxygen, we can spend less time in that stressed out state, more time in that rest and digest parasympathetic state, have more energy, have a calmer mind, get better sleep, do all that good stuff. And so right now, if you think about taking a deep breath now, instead of breathing up, I want you to think about breathing back. So breathe through your nose and think about breathing back. Where do you notice that breath goes? And so beforehand, when you breathed up, maybe you felt your chest rise when you inhaled all that air. Now when you inhale back, where do you feel that go? For me, I feel my diaphragm, so my ribs almost, basically. So the diaphragm is a muscle that runs underneath your ribs that expands and contracts to help that create that pressure in our lungs to help us breathe in and out. And I go out, like I go sideways. And that's essentially where we want to go. So if you put your hands just above your sit bones, just above your hips, and then you take that deep breath back, not up, back, in your nose. Ideally, we want to feel our hands go out, not up. And so by feeling that there going out, we know that that's filling the bottom of our lungs. Like filling the bottom of our lungs, and then from there, if you're able to keep inhaling, then eventually that then travels up and our chest also will expand out, right? So another way of also testing that is if you to just relax, put your hands over the top of your chest, so just below your collarbone and fingers just touching, and then do that same exercise. So breathe in or breathe back through your nose. Notice how, or if you're watching the video on this, as I breathe in. Notice if you're watching the video, as I breathe in, my fingertips part, and because they go out. Coming out wider, not up, they go out. And then as I breathe out, it comes back in. And so that expansion is ideally what we're looking for. We want that to be our natural breath. And so as often as possible, we should be walking around with our lips closed and breathing like that, in through our nose, back through our nose, and expanding our diaphragm. So that expansion of our diaphragm does a couple of things. I'll start from the top. Breathing through our nose and into our diaphragm does a couple of things. Breathing through our nose, we're able to get 20% more oxygen. So we get way more air in. 2, because we breathe through our nose has all the little hairs, all the filters of the air. So it helps support our immune system. It blocks out all the trash in the air that we don't want to be inhaling. We don't want that in our body. So it stops it before it goes down into our lungs. Some of those filters are also able to absorb moisture. So it helps take some of the moisture out of the air that we can absorb, so that we don't get cotton mouth and we're much more hydrated too. Also, breathing in through our nose and also slowing our exhale uses what's called our parasympathetic nervous system. So one element of our nervous system is the autonomic nervous system, right? That's all the automatic functions of our body. So the things that we can't consciously control, things like our organs, basically, so like our heart rate, our hormone release and production, our liver and our digestion, and like all these things that rely on our nervous system telling us when to do all these functions. When we are in a stressed out state, so fight or flight response, all that stuff gets shut down, because unfortunately our body hasn't upgraded to the 21st century model where it doesn't recognize stress from an email or a neighbor as a life threat. It still thinks stress is life or death situations, which unfortunately means that when we're in that stressed out state, things like our sex drive, like our digestion, like recovery, like muscle building, like all that stuff gets put on hold, because essentially what is the point in doing any of that if you're about to die? Like if you're about to get eaten by a tiger or shot by a terrorist, what is the point in your body using its resources to procreate, to digest, to do any of that stuff, when it could be using those resources to either hide or get the hell out of there so that you live to see another day. Right? That's how it prioritizes bodily functions in that stressed out state. And so if you're stressed out a hell of a lot of the time, that's why most people that are stressed out don't have high sex drives, don't have the best digestion, don't have the best sleep, mental health, all that kind of stuff, because it's just not a priority for the body in that point. And so our body is constantly going between that stressed out state and the relaxed state. And so if you put your fingers on your pulse or on your chest, somewhere where you can feel your heartbeat, if you were to slow your breath down, when you breathe in, you'll feel your heart rate go faster. And as you exhale, you feel it slow down. So inhale is a sympathetic or a stress response, and exhaling is a relaxing parasympathetic response. And so the reason I bring this up is so that when you're thinking about breath work or styles of breathing, that you can utilize that to elicit the state that you want. Because essentially we've got three methods or three modes of breathing, essentially. Two are basically the same, but I'll run you through the three for demonstration purposes. So we've got one. One is that stressed out state where we want that stress response because it's necessary. Like, we want to be able to be stressed to heighten that cortisol, heighten that adrenaline, to have that that peak mode, focus, energy level to evade danger, to get out, to do stuff, right? It's a necessary part of survival. So we don't want to never have that, but we don't want to be in that state 24/7. And so if you want to elicit that state because you want to hype yourself up, you want to energize yourself, maybe you've got a meeting, maybe you've got you're going for a workout, or maybe you just want to give yourself a bit of a boost and you don't want to rely on caffeine, stimulants or supplements or anything like that. You want to do it naturally. Awesome. So you would focus on your inhale, like your Wim Hof or dragon or fire breathing type styles. So very inhale dominant, like hyper oxygenating your body, your brain, your cells, right? Very little exhale, massively focus on that inhale. And so you'll notice after you do a lot of those that you can hold your breath for much longer than normal because you've got so much oxygen in and you haven't let any of it out. And so that brings you up, that makes you hyper alert, raises your cortisol, your adrenaline, all those things, and then so you're hyper focused. But we only want to be in that state like maybe 5-10% of our time. The rest of the time we want to be in our default state, right? And our default state should be lips closed, breathing through our nose, back down into our diaphragm, slow rhythmic breath. So we're not overly trying to control our breath, it's just slow and it's just natural, which will roughly be about even. So a rhythmic breath might be anywhere from 3 to 5 seconds in and out. So the same cadence. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Just nice, rhythmic, just steady, stable, right? We're not stressed, we're not like lethargic and too chill, we're just balanced, right? Just keeps us in that state where if we need to go up at a moment's notice, we can, or if we want to go even lower because we're getting ready for bed, where we want to go into a deeper state of meditation, or we want to go do something else, then cool, we can do that. And then so the third, the down, the relaxed, the calm style of breathing can be used for if you're trying to bring yourself down from that hyped up state. Maybe you did that intentionally, or maybe it was not unintentional. Maybe it came from work, or it came from a partner or a situation in life, or maybe you were overthinking, got a little bit anxious, got a little bit stressed out, whatever it might be, and you're now in that state where you want to actively calm yourself down. Again, still breathing through your nose. You can do one of two things. First one I suggest is what's called a physiological sigh. So a double nasal inhale. So slow inhale, as deep as you can. Another inhale, and then exhale for as long and slow as you can. Do that on repeat for a couple of minutes. Other one, which is incredible for your heart rate variability, for calming your nervous system, for calming you down, is what's called resonance frequency breathing, which is a fancy name, but it's simply a 4-second inhale and a 6-second exhale. Again, through your nose, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And so you just simply do that. You don't even really need to count that. I know we say 4 and 6 seconds, but like as long as your exhale is longer than your inhale, you'll be doing just fine, right? And so focusing on one or the other, the inhale or the exhale, depending on your desired state, essentially, can help you to then use that to be in the best mindset, energy level, and energetical state for the task at hand, depending on the time of day, depending on what you've got coming up. And so being able to use your breath to your advantage in things like that can take a massive load off reliance on food for energy, right? Food or drink for energy can take a massive reliance off supplements, again, for energy, for mental clarity, for helping you to calm yourself down as well. You know, I've seen so many people that have utilized things like breath work and, you know, looking after their nervous system, so mindfulness practices, getting optimal sleep, get to a place where they are then able to come off anxiety and depression medication because they no longer need it, because they now have the tools to control their own state through things like this, and then they develop the mental resilience and the awareness to handle their emotions, to handle life, instead of relying on pharmaceuticals and supplements and pills to change that state for them. And so personally, I think that is one of the greatest places that you can be, is in terms of having power over yourself and your life. Like, you have the power just in your breath alone to change your state, to bring you up, to level you out, or to bring you all the way down. And so if you're like me, I used to think I needed to always be on. That's why I was drinking so much caffeine. It was horrible. I was drinking 10 shots a day. I was always anxious and stressed and just always on. Would go from 0 to 100, like in terms of being triggered like that. Sleep was horrible, having seizures, the whole kit and caboodle. And I thought I just always needed to be on, because I thought, well, if you're not on, then you're off. You're calm, which means you're lethargic, which means you're lazy, which means you're unproductive, which means you're useless, and go down that rabbit hole. And then after my own journey in looking into obviously the state of the nervous system, mental health, optimal productivity and flow state and all these things, I've realized, or for me personally at least anyway, that optimal state for productivity, for communication, for just operating on a day-to-day basis is calm but focused. So I'm calm enough that I can see what's happening and I can communicate effectively and respond quickly, not so quickly that I get triggered, that I get reactive, that I say and do things that I don't mean or that I later regret, but I can think with a lot faster and a lot clearer mind, and then speak and articulate myself in that same manner. I'm not just flying by the seat of my pants and just because I'm like hyper speed. And then I've got enough focus to be able to predict where things are going and also see a couple moves ahead of where I need to be, where I want to lead the conversation, how I want this to play out, so I can match my moves to make sure that I'm getting to that place. Because what I found before is when I was always on, when I was just on all the time, hyper caffeinated, hyper stimulated, that everything was I was so reactive. And there's a mess. It's like a cyclone. You take everything in your face as it comes, but then there's a trail mess of, so I probably shouldn't have said that. I didn't handle that the best way I could. And then, if you have a lot of self-doubt or anxiety, you kind of beat yourself up. You overthink things. Oh, they're going to think of this. They're going to think that. I should have done this. Should have done that. Oh no. And then you make the next encounter awkward and whatever else, right? So, for me personally, finding that space of calm but focused has been an absolute game changer. And so, for me, that breath work is a massive part of it. If I feel myself getting too overwhelmed or too overworked, maybe before I've got to do a talk, or before I have to go have a hard conversation, or before my son and wife get home, if I've had a stressful day, or do something, if I'm not in the right headspace or the right energy to handle or to show up to that experience the best way that I can, having that breath work to slow everything down and put me in that state so that I can be present, so that I can communicate effectively, so that I'm not bringing anything else from the day with me into that, has massively helped. And so if you're someone that is stressing out a lot, that is overthinks, that's anxious, that is a lot of the things that I describe, maybe some of my story kind of resonated with you, I implore you to take a look at your breath. Find some time. You can literally do this anywhere you go. You don't have to find designated time. If you can find 5-10 minutes to sit there and do specific breath work, wonderful. But habit stack it. Do it. Just make a habit of doing it while you're sitting on the toilet every day, or doing it while you're driving, or find something else that you have to do every single day, if not multiple times a day, and just do it then. Even if that's the conscious effort that you make of, cool, when I do this, I'm going to make a conscious effort to close my mouth and only breathe through my nose, right? Practice that diaphragmatic breathing that we spoke about, so breathing back, feeling your ribcage go out nice and wide, and see what you notice. See how your thought speed changes, the clarity of your thoughts change, the intention of those thoughts changes, like whether they're more positively geared or more neutral or more optimistic or more neutral, what changes with your energy levels, and how that then snowballs into your mental health, the actions that you take, the quality of your life, and how you kind of show up and do all these things. And so I know I started on breath work, led into a little bit of stress and all these things, but I'm going to wrap it up there because I don't want this to go too long. But if this has been helpful, please drop a comment on this, because I love this kind of stuff. I love these hacks on how you can just use tools that are accessible to anybody to have less stress, more energy, feel your best, perform your best, because then when we are at our best, we show up as our best. And so I know a lot of people, especially a lot of parents, think it's selfish to find time for yourself, to go to the gym, to put into yourself, to do all these things. But realistically, if we're not giving back to ourselves, if we're not looking after ourselves first, then we're doing a disservice, not just to us, but to the people that we want to show up for our partner, for our kids, for everybody else. Because if we're burning ourselves into the ground, we're not sleeping very well, we're anxious, we're tired, we're stressed, we're all these things, our health, mental and physical, is deteriorating, then eventually what we can give to the people that we love becomes less and less and less, until eventually there's nothing left to give. And then what? I hope at that point we don't get I know a lot of people in the past that you get resentful, and then we start blaming other people. But instead of getting to that space, find that time for yourself, because when we can find time for ourselves, then we show up better, we can give more to other people, and we have those boundaries. So it's not selfish to show up for yourself, to find time for this, because in the long run, you can be better for the people that you actively care about. So I hope that's helpful. Like always, don't be sorry, be better. Implement something that you've learned from this. If all of this was new, then I hope you learned something cool. But if you can take one thing away, just pick one thing and implement that. Even if it's just breathing more through your nose. If you knew some of this stuff, but you just needed the reminder, awesome. Set an alarm or your reminder for one of those things you do throughout the day. And that's when you're going to do that breath work. That's when you're going to focus on that inhale and slowing that exhale, whatever it might be. So I hope that's helpful. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have an incredible week.